Hello, my name is Elsie Robles. I am the president over at Riverview Neighborhood. I've lived in the neighborhood, let's say 17 years, but I've been active as president for the past 7 years. I have Anna joining us. She's our vice president. Anna, if you want to introduce yourself.
We can't hear you, Anna. You want to, let's see. It shows that
okay, maybe I should take myself off of mute.
You're
Hi,
good.
good evening, everybody. My name is Anna. I'm the vice president of the Riverview Neighborhood Association. I've lived in the Riverview Neighborhood Association for approximately 35 years.
Thank you and welcome everyone. Elsie, if you want, I can go ahead and share like some of the housekeeping.
Yes.
Before, okay. All right.
Go ahead.
So, hi everyone, I'm Margarita Macedonio with the city's Neighborhood Initiatives Program. And just wanted to thank the Riverview Neighborhood Association leaders for working with our office and the council member to have this meeting. I'm just gonna go over some housekeeping regarding the virtual, how you can participate. So there's just different ways, and some of you are familiar with Zoom. Those who have not, I know it's been a while since some of the neighborhoods have met. So there's a couple of ways that you can participate. If you have a question, let's say, when staff is providing updates, or if you just have a pressing question, you can raise your hand using the raise hand feature at the bottom of the icons in your Zoom app. That will call attention, and we'll all definitely take notice of that. We also have the chat box. If you want to type a question, or the question box, you have those options to be able to do that. So that's one. Then if you are calling by phone to connect to this meeting and you want to raise your hand, you can press *9 to get our attention. And then when we call on you, you can press *6 to unmute yourself and ask your question. Para los que hablan español, si ocupan traducción, déjanos saber en el chat si es posible, y así podemos prender la línea para traducir esta junta en español. So I'm just saying for the Spanish speakers to let us know on the chat if you're a Spanish speaker, and that way we can turn on that feature to be able to provide interpreting. Not all meetings have required that, but we like to make an announcement just to make sure. And I think that covers it, Elsie and Anna. So I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, so I had the privilege of meeting our new councilwoman, Jessie Lopez, a couple weeks ago, or more than a couple weeks ago, actually, because we had a few concerns regarding our neighborhood, and I wanted to take the opportunity to meet her. So Councilwoman Jessie Lopez, you can take the floor.
Thank you, Elsie. Hi, everyone. Good evening. My name is Jessie Lopez, and I'm your councilwoman representing us in Ward 3. And I want to thank Elsie and Martha for meeting with me earlier this year. I met Martha while I was campaigning, and through that conversation, we recognized that there was a lot that we wanted to do together for you, the folks in Riverview. I heard a lot about traffic, accidents, mosquitoes, speeding, development. But in speaking with Elsie and with Martha, we wanted to host this meeting so that you could have the opportunity to express your concerns and share your stories with city staff and with myself regarding the issues that the Bristol and the Santa Clara intersection are causing. And so we have a lot of people on the call today from the city of Santa Ana, which is a really good thing. So feel free to ask any questions. I really want for all of you folks to feel like you're leaving the space with answers to the questions that you have or have had. And again, I just want to thank Elsie and Martha for meeting with me. And I want to thank Margarita and Angie Morris from my office for helping me coordinate this meeting so that we can all be here together. Thank you.
Great.
Okay, so so we're gonna have our Public Works, Sabas?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity. I have a group of engineers with me here, along with myself. I've been the Director of Public Works for the city of Santa Ana for the last year or so, and just happy to be here. We are wanting to listen and see what the issues are. We understand that there is concerns about traffic in the Riverview neighborhood, and also concerns on the intersection of Santa Clara and Bristol, and we have an update for you on that. And so we're here to listen and address your concern, and if we don't have the answers today, we will come up with answers and solutions for your concerns, and we can look into the issues. And I'm here to just listen in and see what we can do for the neighborhood. Absolutely.
Okay, great. So I have also invited West Flora Park Neighborhood Association, or some of the neighbors. So our main concern right now regarding our neighborhood and West Flora Park is that intersection. It's a small intersection, but there's always an accident there. Is there anything that's in the plan, that's in the works to fix
Yes,
that intersection? Okay.
Yes, there is. And I would hand it over to Zed in traffic engineering. Zed is our principal traffic engineer, our newest principal engineer, and he'll be able to update you on our progress in improving that intersection. Zed?
Good evening, everyone. Happy to be here today, and I appreciate you guys taking the opportunity to share these concerns with us. The intersection of Bristol and Santa Clara has a history there, obviously, and it has been brought to our attention, and we've been working on that intersection. Believe it or not, you may not believe this, but for a couple of years now. The concerns originated, and you guys know this as well as I do, there's been, not only a couple of accidents, unfortunately, there's been a couple of fatalities out there as well. One of the things we did many years ago is look at those particular accidents to see what type of accidents are actually taking place, because depending on the patterns, certain things can be done to address those type of collisions. So in looking at the collision history that we had out there, we did identify that the accidents are involving cars that are turning left off of the Bristol street, either going southbound left to go into Santa Clara or northbound. So what we ended up doing is conducting a traffic signal warrant. One of the things that we have to look at is every kind of improvement we do in terms of traffic, there are requirements, guidelines, both federal and state requirements that have to be met to do any kind of improvement out there. So even if we want to do an improvement, it has to meet certain criteria. So having gone through that evaluation, that location does meet what we call the left turn warrant. So a left turn is intended to be installed there. So the problem we have now, though, is the funding. We've been trying to get funding for that location for several years now. Back in 2018, we applied for a grant to get the left turn installed. Unfortunately, it was not approved. We didn't stop there. If we don't get one, anyone that knows me knows that I am very stubborn about getting grants. You tell me no one time, I will try it again. So the next opportunity was in 2020. So we went ahead and applied once again for that particular type of grant to install left turn arrows there. And last I heard, we're supposed to hear back maybe this month or next month to find out if we do get the funding for that. So I'm always optimistic. I'm hoping that we get a positive result this time with the grant to fund that intersection. I do want to point out one other thing that a lot of people don't understand. When you do a traffic signal and you add a left turn arrow, it's not just a simple matter of changing out the vehicle heads, putting in an arrow. what happens is the traffic signal poles themselves, when you add an extra vehicle head, like the left turn arrow, they're designed to have a certain number of vehicle heads on the mast arm, the pole that is over the street. So when we add a left turn arrow, what we have to do is replace the whole arm, the pole, the foundation. It is an expensive proposition. And just to let you know, just as a matter of information, that project right there is about $320,000 just to add those left turn arrows. And unfortunately, the city doesn't have any kind of dedicated funding source for that. So that's why we're always aggressive in trying to find grant funds. So right
Zed,
now, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, Zed. We just have like a couple of responses on the chat. I just wanted to make sure folks have their comments read, you know. So I know for the panelists who want to ask questions, Patricia was asking, are we automatically on mute? And so I just wanted to clarify, yes, you'll remain on mute. And, you know, if there are any questions, you can raise your hand and you'll be able to unmute yourself to participate. So that's one. And then Aaron was asking, why didn't they add a four-way signal? So I think at that location at Bristol and Santa Clara. So I don't know, Zed, if that may be part of the update.
Could I get a clarification in terms of a four-way signal? Because there is a signal there right now. Is a question of left turn arrows on all direction? If that's the question, we actually did look at left turn arrows in all four direction. And like I mentioned earlier, there are requirements that have to be met, certain thresholds. And unfortunately, on the east-west direction, that threshold was not met. There is another physical, even if the thresholds were met for the east-west direction on Santa Clara, there is another challenge we have, and that is on the west side, on the east side, there's entry monuments that narrow the street. So we couldn't physically add left turn phasing there because there's no room to add the left turn pocket unless that improvement would be removed. And I'm not sure if the neighborhood Westfold Park would support something like that. But either way, like I said, it didn't meet the warrant or the requirements for left turn phasing on Santa Clara, but it did meet it on Bristol. And again, the accidents that we documented and were able to confirm are on Bristol, not the ones turning left off of Santa Clara. Or if there are some, there's not enough to actually warrant that requirement for left turn arrows.
Okay, Zed. So there are a lot of questions. So maybe we can go by that. And if you or somebody else from the team wants to respond. So Lugo is asking, are all street or public works improvement funds come from grants? Or does the city of Santa Ana ever self-fund needs like this?
Most, like I said, in terms of signal improvements, they're primarily grant funded. And there's different funding sources. This particular one is a type of funding source that applies to locations that have documented accidents. And we're very aggressive at pursuing any kind of grant funding. So yes, for the most part, these type of improvements are dependent on grant funding because we don't have a dedicated city funding source.
Okay, and then I have another question from on the Q&A box from Yvette. And I think she might have added this later on the chat, but her question reads, why did they split the eastbound Santa Clara lanes into 2 lanes? This is causing major issues turning westbound onto Santa Clara. There's not enough room for incoming autos.
The split would be, I believe they're referring to that east leg where it's a little bit narrower, where you have 2 lanes going in and out. That was part of a neighborhood plan for Westfold Park, and that's why that was done that way. It is a little bit more challenging, I agree. And the other thing too, I believe the street might be a little bit offset, just the geometry of the street. And that goes back to, you know, whenever the street was designed, that was one of the way it was designed. So it is a little more challenging, but I've been out there and for the most part, I think cars do exit. It's a little bit challenging when you have the school kids there because now you're trying to turn and pay attention to the school kids that are crossing. Fortunately, there is a crossing guard out there to help navigate or have the kids cross the street.
Thank you, Zed. So we have MD who has a few comments to ask about the parking that's close to the signals on the Riverview side and a couple of other issues on the stretch. So MD, I'm going to, yeah, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hi, I'm a fairly new owner in the area. I live on the corner of Hesperian and Santa Clara. There's a couple of issues. I posted that I myself got in an accident there in 2020, turning left, leaving Santa Clara onto Bristol. There was also a major accident on the corner of my house where someone was speeding from Bristol, turning right onto Santa Clara, trying to make a sharp right onto Hesperian and hit a parked car. When they did the split, I actually thought that was a good idea. That's just my opinion. But there are cars parked on the side. So when you're turning, coming from Memory Lane on Bristol onto Santa Clara, the cars that are parked on that side make it very hard for people that are driving through. So it's very tight there. Also, I've noticed that you know, the side of my house faces is on the side of Santa Clara. And all day and all night, people are speeding from Poplar, trying to get to the signal at Bristol. And you just hear motorcycles, cars just going really, really fast. That's also a huge safety issue. So I was actually going to try to see if I could petition for speed bumps on that side of Santa Clara between Poplar and Bristol to kind of help slow people down. I like the idea of your signals on Bristol. I'm just curious what that's going to do when the pandemic's over and the traffic was already really backed up into Santa Clara. But anything for safety is very much appreciated. There's just a lot of speed going on Santa Clara and, you know, just trying to make it safer for everybody.
No, and we appreciate that, and we know that speeding is a very common concern, not only on Santa Clara, but on many other streets throughout the city, and quite frankly, even other cities in other jurisdictions. For Santa Clara, what we could do is, you mentioned the thing about speed humps. We do have a speed hump program, and we could start looking into that to see if it meets certain criteria. But the very first thing we would have to do is look at quantify the speeding to determine how bad it actually is, because one of the things that you can imagine, speeding could be a little subjective. You could be out there and someone says it's, you know, how bad is it? So what we want to do is find out a way to make sure that we could actually quantify the amount of speeding. So we'll go ahead and proceed with that approach and do a speed survey out there just to find out how bad the speeding is and start looking at potentially that speed hump program. The other thing we could offer as well is, depending upon what the results of the speed survey are, we do have some radar feedback signs that could actually be placed out there to at least educate and inform the driving motorist of the speeds that they're driving. We didn't have those for many years. We just started getting them last year, and they're something that we love to put out in the neighborhoods. It really helps to educate, and hopefully that'll help address some of that speeding out there. And if the speeding is on the higher side, we could also work with the police department to get some targeted enforcement. If we put the radar trailers out there, they will let us know specifically what time of the day or night some of the speeding takes place, so that we could actually work with the police department and they could provide some enforcement at targeted times when we know it's more pronounced.
Am I on mute yet or no?
Go ahead, and then Councilmember would like to also address, would like to respond. So go ahead.
There are driveways on Santa Clara. Mine is one of them. So that's a huge concern, because when we're trying to back out of our driveways, people are just speeding from Poplar trying to get to the Bristol. So, you know, I don't know what the duration of the speed surveys are, or those proposed radars that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know what that duration is like, but anything would help, I think. But I just wanted to mention there are at least 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 driveways on Santa Clara. So that's another part of the concern, is that as we're backing out, it's unsafe.
And just to let you know, the radar trailers we place out there, we would put it in what we call stealth mode the first day or two. What that means is we're just collecting data. It's not going to be providing any feedback. And then after that, we'll turn it on, and then we could leave it out there for a week or 2 weeks. So we definitely get a good sense of the times that speeding takes place.
Thank you, Zed. I'd like to
Thank you.
turn it over to Councilmember Jessie Lopez. Go ahead, Councilmember.
Yeah, I had a question that, you know, I'm supportive of the radar signs going up and for educational purposes. Is there any other place in the city that they have gone up?
The radar trailers, yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, unfortunately, we had some issues with the software. So they're in the yard, but they've been in different locations, primarily lately, mostly on major arterials, MacArthur, Alton, Fairview, Greenville. And we also have them with the COVID messages, unfortunately. So they're doing double duty right now. So we'll put a COVID message, but we also have them working on the speed enforcement side of it, or speed education side. But they're primarily the major arterials because we want to make sure that we promote and help out with the COVID pandemic.
Got it. Understood. Thank you. I think Elsie had a question.
Go ahead, Elsie.
Sorry, no, I had a question earlier, but it was already answered. It was what MD was bringing up about the tight, the narrow street. It's fine. I got it answered already.
So Elsie and Anna, we have some more questions. Maybe we can continue to read them because I think people are, there's a lot of concerns about the congestion like around Santa Clara and Bristol. So,
well, I was going to say, like years ago, we did bring up how we wanted a left turn to get out of Santa Clara to get on Bristol. But now it's correct. Now that it's put in, it's congested. We do have parked cars along Santa Clara. So then we do have, cars that are driving down Bristol who want to turn into Riverview, into Santa Clara, into our neighborhood. It's tight. We've got the parked cars. I mean, there's a red zone where there's no cars, but it's tight. So, I don't know if you guys can look at that. And
Margarita, there's a question from Carlos about that. Zed, maybe you can answer this. Carlos is asking, he's stated that it's not so much exiting, but entering the neighborhood, and thus it is creating an issue. So the narrow streets have caused several accidents, and we've seen several accidents. They're blocking the entrance. Is there anything that we can do, at least paint the area red so cars don't park there?
What we could do is we'll actually look at the collision history to see and confirm what happened with those accidents. And then if we need to, we'll extend the red curb or accommodate that. We'll double check the lane width as well, because what we have out there is most likely typical to other locations where the entry lane is definitely narrower, but it should accommodate minimum standards. So we'll double check that, make sure everything is up to the appropriate standards. And if we need to adjust it to remove some parking, we'll have to do that.
okay, and Carlos also posted that same concern on the chat. So I'd like to continue if it's okay. Rudy, he's posted another issue, and I'm glad that we have our police commander, traffic commander on the call. So Rudy is sharing another issue is the racing down Bristol, especially between 17th and Memory Lane. Can you add a dip or something to slow down the racing? And Rudy, he's raised his hand. So I guess because it's related to his question. Rudy, did you want to add something else? Rudy? Rudy Reyna, can you hear us? Okay. Well, maybe Zed and our traffic commander or corporal can address the street racing and what measures could be.
So, Margarita, I can address
Okay.
the street racing. This is Commander Elms. I'm the commander over the traffic division here at the police department. And as you know, we've had some issues with racing throughout the city. We've developed a partnership with Public Works to address street racing and reckless driving. We created a steered program. Steered stands for Strategic Traffic Enforcement Against Racing and Reckless Driving. That partnership not only entails the police department and Public Works, but also most other law enforcement agencies in the county. And this partnership has addressed street racing in Santa Ana, but also countywide. And so the number of street racing events have dropped drastically. I think it's important to note that there's a difference between impromptu street races where two cars pull up side by side and they decide to race versus street racing crews. And I think along Bristol, what we have is we have speeders, but we also have these impromptu street races. I'm all for doing anything we can to the roadway to slow people down. And we have great traffic engineers who put me in my place, and they have regulations they have to abide by. They have studies they have to conduct. They just can't arbitrarily put a dip in, although I would love it. They can't arbitrarily put in speed bumps, although I would love that too, because it would slow people down. But last year, we had 2 complaints regarding speeding on Santa Clara. One on August 3rd and one on August 13th. And during both of those, we issued citations, I believe 8 citations on the 3rd of August for speeding on Bristol. So it's very hard for us to catch the impromptu street racers. But my officers routinely run speed on Bristol between Memory and 17th Street. And the reason they do that is because in that long stretch of roadway, there's only one traffic light, and that's at Santa Clara. And so cars tend to pick up speed and go faster than they should. So we do conduct speed there when we can, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you, Commander Elms.
Margarita, can you hear me? This is William.
Yes, William, let me,
Maybe this is a good time to just have a quick discussion on the speed hump policy. There was a question that came in as to what is the criteria for speed humps. And so maybe I missed the answer, but I know that Zed and I are working together to revise the speed hump policy so that it can be a little more relaxed and we can get more speed humps on collector streets. We could not allow it on a Bristol street or a 17th Street or on some of the arterial streets. There's all kinds of regulations and also emergency access that we need to maintain. But certainly on Santa Clara, like Zed mentioned earlier, we will measure, we'll put the trailers out, we will measure what the volume and what the speeds are. And then we have new criteria for speed humps. We are recently installed speed humps on near Harbor and do you know what that street is, Zed, by offhand?
Bewley.
Bewley, that's right.
Bewley.
And we will be also installing speed cushions on Washington, east of Main Street. And so we'd be happy to look at Santa Clara and what the traffic patterns are impacting the neighborhood so that maybe we can do some engineering. But like Commander Elms stated, it is a partnership between engineering and the police so that we can do the engineering, we can do the enforcement, and jointly we can educate our public.
Thank you, William. I'm going to continue on the chat. There are a lot of responses. So Carlos has retyped his question. Maybe perhaps he needed more clarification about the corner of Santa Clara when you're coming into the Riverview neighborhood. Again, the comment that it's a very narrow entrance. So Zed, I think you had responded that you will look into that.
Yes, of course.
Okay. And then Yvette was asking about why they splitted the eastbound Santa Clara lanes into 2 lanes, causing major issues turning westbound on Santa Clara, and there's not enough room for incoming autos. Was there any other information, Zed, regarding that comment?
No, on that one is just for efficiency and movement. I know that in the past, there was a request for left turn pockets out there. So that's one of the improvements that was in response to them. And it also, the other thing too, it helps separate some of the kids crossing. So there is a safety benefit to that. Because
Okay.
as everyone knows, that is a school crosswalk right there.
All right. And then MD has commented that there's racing going on from Poplar on Santa Clara to get to Bristol. And again, the speed humps. And as you clarified, William, efforts to try to make it a little bit more flexible to be able to be considered in some of these side streets.
And Margarita, if I can just add to what I heard MD, one of MD's question was in terms of the speed survey timeline, what would that look like?
In the speed survey, we'd probably be able to get something out there in about 2-3 weeks. I mentioned that the radar trailers are actually basically in the shop right now. We're supposed to get them back. I'm hearing end of this week, early next week, but as soon as we do get them out, we could put them out there. So 2 to 3 weeks at the earliest.
Thank you, Zed. Thank you, Councilmember. So Aaron was just clarifying all directions. I think when earlier about the Bristol Santa Clara area, how many accidents does it take? Again, speaking to the concern about collisions, in that area. And then Rudy typed again, couldn't you alternate the lights? First the eastbound, then the westbound? This is in regards to the Santa Clara.
Technically we could, but it's going to delay everybody. That increases the amount of time you get a cycle. So that's something we could look into though, but it definitely would create a delay. So everybody getting out of the neighborhood, if we were to do that, it would definitely delay everybody by at least a couple of, maybe 30 to 60 seconds. And it doesn't sound like a lot when you think 30 to 60 seconds, but when you're sitting, waiting, 30 to 60 seconds is a lot.
Rudy, I'm gonna unmute you. Let's try again. I know you were trying to speak.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Go ahead,
Okay,
Rudy.
thank you. Well, in regards to that, where I mentioned maybe making one light go first and the second light, couldn't that be done with just during the major traffic time? It doesn't have to be done 24/7. What I mean is just when when you're doing your evaluations, say, okay, the major traffic is in the morning and in the evening, and it could be done just at that time of the day. Just a thought.
No, that's a very good question. And so what happens when we have any kind of traffic operation, you want to make sure it's consistent and uniform. So when you have changes, some people may or may not be aware of it. So you do increase the likelihood of someone not paying attention. And in and of itself, if someone is expecting to be a certain way, they could get confused and they won't know. So we don't like and we do not encourage any kind of differences in operation if it's operating a certain way in the morning and something like that in the afternoon, because it's not uniform and it will increase accidents out there because, again, people will not know how it's operating.
Thank you, Zed. Let's see, MD shared as what she shared earlier. She got in an accident off of Santa Clara, turning left onto Bristol in 2020. Aaron has commented, when you turn west onto Santa Clara from Bristol, the congestion is so bad with the parked cars and that it's very narrow. So we've heard several comments about that. Loretta has commented that she agrees with MD who was speaking earlier. Nick, same here. Carlos agrees. Yvette agrees. Aaron is saying yes, speed bumps. Debbie, I agree about the narrowness about Santa Clara due to parked cars. Yes, on the speed humps. What's the criteria? I think William had addressed that. And then there's Lugo's asking again, why are the grants the only source of funding? I think he asked this earlier. Do other cities have dedicated funds for improvements? The question is about the other cities.
To be honest with you, I'm not sure how other cities fund their traffic signals, but I do know that at least every engineer that I've talked to in other agencies, everybody pursues grants. If they have some kind of dedicated funding source, I'm not sure. Irvine, I know, has a lot of development and they get funding through those developments to pay for signals, but that's related to the development of those projects. But I do know that every city engineer that I've talked to relies on grants for most, if not all, of their signal projects.
And if I can add, the city has gas tax and Measure M as the only dedicated source for traffic and street improvements. And I'll explain why in a second. But besides that dedicated source, the city has also demonstrated to be very, very successful in securing grants. So all of our CIP projects that are not water or sewer related, they're pretty much all done via grants. So we aggressively pursue grants. I believe that Measure X and the general fund could fund street improvements, but that more falls on the city council to make decisions where you also have other competing interests for traffic safety from law enforcement, parks and recreation. And because the city has been so successful in securing grants, we tend not to get any general fund. So we have to rely on our gas tax, Measure M, and grants. Again, our track record is that we've been very, very successful. So kudos to Zed and company. They've secured millions and millions of dollars for active transportation in the recent years. And I know that this signal has been one that it has been looked after for several years. And for whatever reasons, it's only been until recently that we've secured funding. Zed, do you know when the funding will be authorized so that we can?
Oh, no, William, we have not received funding on this one. We just applied for a grant.
Oh, okay.
SHIP grant. We should hear back late this month or early next month.
Okay, but it is our top priority in terms of signals.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So Anna was asking, let's see earlier, if changes, can they extend the red zone? Yvette was asking that. So the red zone that had been discussed earlier, if that could be extended.
We will definitely look into that. Of course, if needed, it will be extended.
Also, Aaron commented that it'll get worse when school starts and that all the children are at risk. So Anna was asking a question about, if there was any changes that arise, will the neighborhood be advised of the changes?
We'll be more than happy to notify the neighborhood of any changes before they take place.
Okay. MD has commented, the other issue is the parking on Santa Clara from the residents from the apartment facing Bristol. Can we get parking permitted due to the major congestion in the area? Is the criteria more favorable or easier to get?
Frank, this is your question.
Hi, everybody. Good evening.
There you go, Frank.
There is no favorable treatment with permit parking. It basically comes down to your street and then people that want permit parking on that street. So it's a self-induced program that people have to vote for it and say, yes, I want it. So that regardless of what the conditions are out on the street, and if it does pass, it would clear up some of the street entrance. But it comes down to people wanting to impose that parking restriction onto themselves. So there's nothing that we could add to it, like extra points or extra credit, to make it pass. It has to be self-driven by the residents in that street segment. And if they choose to, they pass it at 66%, and then we install it. So there's no other no other credit we give them for anything occurring out there. It's a standalone program.
Okay, we have a question from Anna. Go ahead, Anna. I'm sorry, MD. It was MD, not Anna. I thought it was Anna.
This is MD.
Yes.
So in regards to the parking, I did call Public Works, and I got an explanation. To be honest with you, it seems very difficult to obtain, not just because the people have to buy into it, but just the process, the way it was explained to me. So if I want to go door to door to 20 neighbors on my street, I have to have 66% of them want it. I send in the paperwork, and then the city has to contact each individual home, and they have to re-vote that they want this parking. And I'm assuming you guys are accumulating information. So it's like a double opportunity for them to say no. And you know, I get it. It's you know, it has to be voluntary, but considering, you know, the issues of speed and the congestion on Santa Clara and Hesperian being right in the middle of all that, you know, just some vandalization that goes on, trash. This area, the beginning part of Riverview, is not very nice looking. If you keep going down to the golf course, it gets better and less congested. We're trying to have a nice neighborhood, so we're just asking the city for some help. Are there other ways to look at this and consider a better method for you know, the extra cars and the extra traffic that's coming through? So that's where I'm coming from.
MD, can I just correct something real quick? And I apologize if somebody gave you the wrong information, but let me just, if everybody get everybody's indulgence on this, the permit parking program, there's the first portion that you mentioned. It's what we call an interest form. It gives the option to the person requesting permit parking to actually walk around, like you mentioned, to your neighbors, but it's only a 50+1 requirement on that one. You need 50+1 signatures, and it can come from, say, tenants, or it could come from owners. So that would qualify to go into petitioning. Now, once it goes into the petition process, it involves only the owners to vote, and then they have to be 66% of them have to say yes to the program to be able to establish permit parking. So just a little correction there, and I apologize if you got the wrong information. I wanted to clarify it. Now, you don't have to go door by door to get any signatures. You can ask us to do what we call an observation, and you can tell me that the observation should be done at 2 a.m, Saturday to Sunday or Monday to whatever, and I'll be out there at that time, or one of my staff members will be out there doing what we call an observation. We'll see what the impact of parking is in the area. And if it qualifies, you know, with a certain threshold, which is 75% of the street has to be parked, then it gets kicked into petitioning, and we go back to that process where the owners have to agree to it. 66% of them have to agree with the petition to install permit parking. So if that walking around is something you don't want to do, or you don't have the time to do, then we can do that for you by doing the observation. You just tell us what date of the week and at what time's the worst condition, and we can go out there and do that. So I just want to clarify the program real quick on that. As far as removing parking, that's like sometimes removing teeth, because if we do remove parking in areas where people need it, like say the residents are along that stretch that we're looking to remove, they're moving now deeper into the neighborhood. So we try to have a balance, like we did on the west side of Santa Clara, where there's red curbs, and then just beyond the alley, you see where parking opens up again. We try to have a balance to make sure we have parking for everyone there, as well as accessibility.
Well, yeah, I can understand that, but it's also, I mean, you guys have to consider that some of those tenants have multiple cars, and they don't have access to be having that many cars. So what they're doing is they're just parking anywhere they can as close to the to Bristol, and they're making the neighborhood not safe and not look good either. I've had people park covering my driveway on Santa Clara. You know, people leave trash all the time. You know, there's so many things that you got to consider. You can't just consider, well, they need parking. Well, then why do they have 7 cars per one household? You know, so I think there's a lot to consider here, and it's just the fact that it's a very unique corner to look at that. Thank you for clarifying, by the way. But the person that I spoke to on the phone made it seem like the observation thing was kind of not something you guys do very often. And she was saying that the best thing for me to do was to do it on my own. But you know, I'm willing to try. I'm not sure if I'll be successful. I'm willing to try, but you know, it doesn't allow even for people who live on Hesperian and Santa Clara, if we have visitors, to be able to park our visitors. So you know, it's a really tough spot, I think, for everybody. But where I think that the observation from the city and the city stepping in really makes more of a difference than just leaving it up to us, the owners, in this particular case, because of the uniqueness of the area.
And I'd be glad to obviously would do that observation. Just you can tell me the date, time, when the best time to see the problem, because what I tell people normally is I have to go, you're living a movie, I have to take a picture of that movie, and we're trying to capture the best picture because I have to do this legitimately to see that there is a problem out there. So if you tell me, like, again, any day of the week, whatever time that is, we'll be out there and we'll do that observation for you. So before we get out, I can probably have Margarita put my information out to everybody. And that way, anybody has questions when anything to do with permit parking or even the speed hump program as well, our team handles that. So we're here for you to help you out. And just a point of clarification, as far as the program goes, we can't just apply the program because someone has 7 cars out there. It's the block that has to be able to bring it onto itself. If they do that and they pass it, then that problem, you're right, goes down the street possibly, or it may go away. It's just, it starts on one block and then it has to move forward. So we try to address it as technically as we can, and what the law allows us to do, actually. So that's the other part of it. And that's where the program is centered completely on how the ordinance is written to make it as fair as possible to everybody. That's why we offer the observation if you want us to do it, or if you want to go and canvass your neighbors, then that's an option as well, like what I mentioned earlier. Either or, we're here to help you on both of those. I just want to make sure they understand the program's pretty dry, and I'll forward information to you on the program. There's no other extra credits, there's no other periphery items that we can add to it. It's very straightforward on what we do.
Frank?
So,
thank you.
William wanted to add to that. Go ahead, William.
Yeah, you know, I sense the frustration by MD, and it just highlights the competing interests here. On the one hand, we have parking issues where we want to be able to maximize parking and institute permit parking so that those that live in the neighborhood can park, while at the same time we're trying to reduce some of the parking to improve visibility and safety, particularly on Santa Clara as you approach Bristol in both directions. So it's a balancing act. I understand that this is a special problem, excuse me, a situation, a neighborhood with some special problems, and Zed will be looking at the traffic safety, the traffic circulation, and the traffic signals. And as city engineer, I will also work with Frank to see what we can do to alleviate the parking situations. 2 competing interests, and unfortunately, it seems to have been converging in this Riverview neighborhood. So we'll look into it, but it's not an easy problem to resolve.
Thank you, William. I wanted to turn it over to Michelle on the Q&A. I know we've had some comments on the Q&A box. Michelle?
Yes, there is a question from Nick, and Zed, maybe you can help out with this one. Nick comments that there's many corners that are not painted red and people will park in dangerous manners, increasing the risk of clipping parked cars. How often are corners reevaluated for no parking assessments?
Yeah, that's something we could take a look at. If there's specific corners or intersections that they want us to look at, we'll go ahead and do that.
Margarita, can you unmute Nick possibly, or how
Yes.
do we unmute him?
Yeah, so let me,
We'd love to hear from you more.
go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, thank you. One in particular would be Spruce and Riviera. I see that people park there, also on Pacific and Poplar. So when people are turning right onto any of those streets from Riviera, it's almost like a perpendicular with the street where the rear end of the car will be sticking out, I don't know, 3 or 4 feet, and it's not really hugging the curb at all. So you have to really make a wide right turn. And as we all know, people like to drive quickly through this neighborhood. And I just fear that some people might turn too tightly and clip cars. And I'm not sure if it's happened before. I'm not sure if it has, if people have reported it to the police department or anybody. But I just think it's a little bit unsafe and that some precautions should be taken, you know, paint the corners at least red so people don't park there and increase the risk of an accident or injury.
Yeah, we'll
insight.
definitely take a look at that. Thank you.
So I'll add to that. So any corner is part of an either a marked or unmarked crosswalk, and vehicles can't park on the corner. So if they're parking on the actual corner and their vehicle's sticking out, and I'm trying to picture what you're describing, that is a violation, and our parking control officers can come out and issue citations for that. So if you observe that, please call us.
Thank you.
And Commander Elms, you're talking about the non-emergency line for the police department, so I can
Yes.
place
so,
that information on the chat.
Yes, absolutely. That will go to our dispatch, and then they will dispatch either one of my motors or one of my parking control officers or a patrol officer.
Thank you. Michelle, back to you. On the
I don't know
Q&A.
if we addressed MD's earlier question about, you know, she doesn't agree, or, you know, they need to help remove some of the parking spots as you turn in. It's very tight. Again, does MD want to add to that? If you can unmute her, Margarita.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
I think we actually addressed all of that.
Okay, good.
Before, I have, thank you, Frank, for putting your email information. I just want to ask the neighbors on Hesperian to use that information, please, to help all of us and submit photos and times of date. But to add to Frank offering to come and do the observation, it'd probably have to be at various times, just because it does vary. And to the comment made about the parking on the corners, it happens on my corner all the time, Hesperian and Santa Clara, and they usually do it overnight when your parking people aren't working. So we can't call anybody. And I've had times where I call the police for people parking into my driveway and they won't come. And I understand it's not an emergency, but I mean, there's nothing we can do. We can't get into altercations with people on the street. So, I mean, you know, it is what it is. And it feels like no one's paying attention to what's going on here in this area. So I'm just really happy to have this forum to be able to speak to somebody, because it's been very frustrating.
So to answer your question, I do have parking control officers that work throughout the night. They don't work every night. I do have a parking control officer that starts at 3 o'clock in the morning, and his job is to go out into these neighborhoods and look for issues just like you described. And if you've called the police, have you called the police regarding this issue?
Not the corner, but yes, blocking my driveway.
Okay, so yes, I call the police. We try to get there as quickly as we can. Sometimes we can, depending on the amount of personnel we have out, we can get there quicker than other times. But I do have parking control officers, either police department personnel or our private contract company, out at almost all hours of the night, so they can respond.
Thank you, Commander. I'd like to go back to the chat just to make sure everyone's comments and questions are continuing to be addressed. This is very helpful for us. So Joan had entered, if eastbound Santa Clara turning left would stop behind the extra white stripe that was added, it would help southbound Bristol turning west on Santa Clara, give some added room. Some people do, some people do not. And Aaron added, the signal is already delayed. So Public Works.
Yeah, well, those are things what we'll do. What I plan on doing for that intersection is just doing observations to see how it's operating and see if we have any recommendations to address any of those concerns that are expressed.
Okay, excellent. And then MD had entered with the new speed bump program, is the criteria better to obtain, meaning more flexible, so we will have better probability of getting them? William, would you be able to speak on that?
Yes, so what we looked at is it's a combination of volume and speeds in residential streets. We're revising so that it's not so restrictive. And we actually came up with some graphics that will show anyone that's interested into what it takes to qualify for speed humps. The policy has not yet been officially adopted, but it's in the final stage of development. We will be possibly presenting the policy to our ETAC commission just for informational purposes, but internally I will be meeting with Zed and with our public works director to officially adopt it internally, and then we can go from there.
Thank you, William. And I just want to quickly say that I'm so happy staff has lights, the lights back, because I saw them go out.
Yes. Okay, so let's see, Nick, this may have been raised before. Many corners are not painted red and people will park into, yeah, we did, that people park dangerously. So I think, and I went ahead and entered the dispatch line for the police department to report those types of situations so that a motor officer or a parking control officer can respond. And Councilmember Jessie Lopez has also entered her contact information so folks can reach her as well. Yvette also had a family member in a major accident, left turn out of Santa Clara onto Bristol. So there's some stories that were, that are being shared tonight about like direct, impacts regarding that intersection. Loretta responds, please do it for us. I live on Hesperian too. Check the parking on all our streets, and Hesperia is not always the most crowded. Parking permits would make a difference. Too many cars per household. Okay, so and we have Frank's contact information. Loretta, if you also wanted to follow up with his email. Aaron, can we submit our photos with the time and date?
Please. Yeah, if you're talking about permit parking, yes, definitely, that helps. That if you're asking us to do an observation, this will be added to that observation. And as far as the interest form, you can add the 3 photos to the interest form if you get the signatures 50+1 of the street, and then you can submit it that way as well. So for the interest form, you need 3 photos, 50+1, and the segment that you want us to approve. If you get that, then we go straight into petitioning. Normally the observations take about 2 to 3 weeks just to organize them and then go out there and get them done. So if that was the question as far as the pictures for permit parking, yeah, please submit any information you have that helps us.
Okay. Is Aaron also asking the question for the police department? For any illegally parked cars?
Let's see, let's go to Aaron. Go ahead, Aaron.
No, I didn't really have any questions. That was my question. As far as there's a lot of questions, but a lot of the answers have been answered. But I'm with everybody as far as the permits and the congestion on Santa Clara and Bristol. But one of the questions I do have is how many accidents does it take? Because I called the city about years ago, and they had the same answer. And from 10 years ago until up until now, there's been quite a few accidents. So, but how many accidents does it take? Because my concern is when school starts again, the traffic that we have now is not going to be, it's nothing compared to what it's going to be when school starts. It's worse. And when people get off the freeway and they're going to City Hall, or because we are the city seat, and we have a lot of students going to Santa Ana College, and we have 2 elementary schools, well, one, Santiago, and then we have Mendez. So, you know, we're talking a lot of foot traffic and a lot of vehicle traffic, and this signal just doesn't cut it. And the traffic is horrible. So, you know, there's a lot of unanswered, there's a lot of questions that have been unanswered for me for the last 10 years, because it's still the same answer that I got 10 years ago.
William, can you add to that? Some
I can
insights
start.
to Aaron?
Yeah, I can start, and then maybe Zed can help me fill in the gaps that I'm inevitably gonna have. You know, when it comes to traffic signal modifications and traffic signals, there is something called warrants. And yes, collisions make a difference in warranting the installation of signals. So unfortunately, it's not that how many traffic accidents we need to have in order to fulfill traffic signal changes or the installation of a traffic signal. There's other factors too, but that's one of the main ones. This signal at Santa Clara and Bristol has qualified for the traffic signal modifications that we're looking at. It's already qualified. Now it's a matter of securing the funding and then designing the signal and then actually building the changes. So again, this is our top priority. I know that for a few years, this has been our top priority. It's just been unfortunate that we have not been able to secure funding. Zed, can you kind of fill in a couple of things that I've left out?
Oh, well, I think you did a great job there. Just one thing I did want to point out is I've been here quite a while in traffic engineering. And a long time ago, I recall this particular intersection was not even going to be considered for a traffic signal just because we're trying to wait for the Bristol widening to take place. But you know, because of the residents started expressing concerns about this location, we said, we can't wait. We can't wait. So we started pursuing the grant funding that we unfortunately were unsuccessful to obtain so far. But again, I'm hoping that in the next month or two, we'll be able to at least update the neighborhood in terms of the latest efforts the city has put forward to try to get this particular intersection funded with the left turns on Bristol. Because I know, again, some of the accidents, the fatal ones in particular, were involved in that particular movement.
We also have Councilmember Lopez who would like to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Margarita. Aaron, you know, I quickly wanted to let you know that I think I can speak. I hate speaking for other people, but I think it's safe to say that one too many traffic accidents and fatalities is one too many for all of us. And so I think what is going to be different moving forward is, number one, the funding, as you know, William and Zed have talked about in the past, but also just the willingness for us to have this conversation and come together and exchange thoughts and ideas and to find solutions to the problems that we are experiencing. And I think that this is step one. As you said, this is a conversation that you and many other people have tried having in the past. And so I think that, you know, working with Elsie and with the rest of the folks on the board and, you know, with Director Saba and the rest of the team and myself, we're really going to push to find a safe way for everybody to feel safe in their community.
Thank you. And we have
no, I really appreciate that. Thank you.
We also have Director Saba who wanted to comment. Go ahead, Nabil.
Yes, I just want to summarize all the issues that have been discussed. We know, and we've heard it loud and clear on the Bristol and Santa Clara intersection improvements. And I trust that staff is very close in getting that funding, about $400,000 to make those improvements. And I hope, I am sure that this improvement will add much more safety to that intersection. In the same time, we would be doing a speed survey on Santa Clara. We would also, in the same time, install a speed feedback sign on Santa Clara just to gauge the issues there and get a good measurement of what the problem is. And at the same time, look at the extension of the red curb along Santa Clara. Although from my Google map, I see that it's pretty deep in. So more red curb will reduce the number of parking spots along Santa Clara in front of residents, but we would still look at that and see if that is an option to make it a safer turn into the neighborhood. In the same time, we would be looking at from the speed study the speed hump option or speed cushion. So we'll look at those as options. And with that, I just wanted to mention to the group is, we can do the speed survey and the speed hump feasibility study on it. And if that comes in, then we're going to have to look for funding to install those. Like the questions came to us is, can't the city get money from elsewhere? But grants, we rely heavily on grants for traffic signal improvement and those kind of projects. Not much money is available to us for these type of improvements from the general fund. That's why, again, Zed and his group is aggressive going after grants. So that being said, and we will also look at the parking district on Hesperian. So that is something that we would work on once the requests come in, and I trust that Frank and his team will go out and do the observations on the Hesperian. And also one last question for Zed, red curb on corners. I don't see many corners with red curb. Is there a standard to that, or is it typical? Sorry, it's my son. Is it typical that we do red curb on corners?
Typically not, because as Commander L mentioned, it is a violation and cars shouldn't park there. So that would just be redundant, and it becomes a maintenance issue long term. Cars shouldn't park in the first place. So the first option would be enforcement. If it becomes a pronounced issue, we could consider it, but typically it's not something that is done because of the violation that's in place.
So that being said, we would still look at Spurs and is it Riviera and Pacific and Poplar corners to see if there's an issue there. Yes. So those what I have, that things that we have been charged to do.
Yes, and I just wanted to add to that from some of the chat comments. It seems like there's some organizing happening with the Hesperian residents. So like Loretta and MD, Loretta's asking to compare the Hesperian parking with the Spruce Street parking as part of, the observations, that are being done. And so MD, definitely wants to coordinate with those Hesperian neighbors that are on this call to collectively send information to Frank regarding the permit, all the follow-up, Nabil, I think that you're talking about. There's a commitment by Hesperian neighbors to start that process. So that's great.
Sure.
Melissa's comments. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your night to hear from our neighborhood. MD appreciates the panel. Great to have you all on the line at once. It takes a village. In this case, it takes a neighborhood. Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Lopez. Martha Molina Avilas is sharing for your regarding your quick response to our neighborhood and having staff address concerns. Nick is sharing that there have been at least 2 fatalities since he's moved here in 2017. And then we've got a question from Matt, and then Michelle, I'll turn it back to you on the Q&A box. So Matt is asking, what effect might the new freeway configuration have on the traffic on Bristol backing up to Santa Clara once people start going back to work?
I have to ask a question on that one. What is a change in the freeway configuration that they're referring to?
All right, let's go to Matt. Let's see, Matt Perry, go ahead. Go ahead, Matt.
Hi, can you hear me right now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. It was permanently taking away the access to the 22 eastbound off of the Bristol Street on-ramp and then configuring it to the 57 and the 5 southbound only.
Okay, on that one, I believe Caltrans did conduct a traffic study, and it didn't necessarily show any particular impact because the movement would be primarily, if there's any changes on traffic, it'll be on Bristol, but it did not show any specific impacts at all.
Okay, I know that I used to take that on-ramp all the time to go to work at 7, and then I got a better job that goes earlier, but I know that backed up forever at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Correct, absolutely.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, so let's go, Michelle, let's go to you on the do we have any outstanding Q&A that we need to address?
Margarita, but we still have a number of messages. There's one from Anna asking, can our council member reserve funding since our neighborhood is highly concerned of safety of people? I'm not sure if Councilmember Lopez can address that tonight.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. Anna, I alone don't have the authority to do that, so it has to be a conversation that I have with the rest of the council members, and that would most likely be addressed during a council meeting. So it's something that I can definitely circle back and keep the neighborhood through Elsie and Martha and anybody else on the board updated on.
Okay.
Okay, so go ahead.
Go ahead, Margaret.
Oh, I was just gonna continue along because we had a couple of more messages on the chat. MD is asking if there are any, is there any update on the Bristol widening project? We know that it's in different phases. Where does that start and end on Bristol?
William, would you have a background on that one?
Yeah, the widening on Bristol continues. The widening phases are south of this particular segment that we're on, which is north of 17th Street. So as of now, there is no future funding identified for any Bristol widening that would occur near Santa Clara. We do have some minor improvements on Bristol near Memory Lane. There are some additional widening that's taking place right near the intersection. But any widening that's going to be on Bristol Street near Santa Clara, there's no future funding identified. So that would have to be new funding that we pursue. The Bristol widening that has been taking place started some 20 years ago, and the funding that was identified back then was insufficient to do it all at one time. And there's quite a bit of property acquisitions. So that's why the phasing has occurred at different times. And it's a very, very confusing project because what we would do is we would use the funding that we did identify and we'd go after grants and we'd match up the funding for Bristol with grant money. And then those are the segments that we would do. So it's a good question, but unfortunately, there's probably not going to be any widening and improvements on Bristol near Santa Clara.
Thank you, William. And so we have one last comment on the chat from Joan. I have a simple problem for the city. Mark the two-way stop signs on Marion Way at Poplar and at Forest. You marked a four-way one on Santa Clara.
That's not as simple as it may seem, by the way. There are requirements that have to be met. We have to be very careful when you do two-way versus four-way stop. There are requirements that are basically in place to guarantee that people will abide by the four-way stop. If certain criteria is not met, you're going to get into a situation where the compliance is going to be extremely low. So if you're going to be in a situation we're going to cross that intersection, if we're to put a four-way stop that's unwarranted, there's no guarantee that anyone's going to be stopping in the opposing direction. So what we could do is take a look at those and conduct follow-up studies to see if the volumes would warrant that stop. But we'll definitely conduct a study out there.
Thank you, Zed. At this point, I do not have any other comments on the chat or hands raised, so I wanted to turn it back to Elsie and Anna.
Okay, so I believe we already addressed all of the major issues in the neighborhood, but a couple of the little ones would be regarding the stop signs. People don't stop at our stop signs or speed through or do majority of the California stops. But at one of our meetings, I believe one of the officers did say the people who are running the red lights are the residents. So, you know, it could be true, could be not. I don't know. So it's the red lights, I mean, the red stop signs and the speeding. We get a lot of speedings on some of the streets in the neighborhood. So I don't know. I guess we have to do speed bumps. So
Go
then
ahead.
that would be.
Commander Elms, do you want to start off on this one?
Yeah, so when we get complaints in an area, I'll send my staff out, my motors, or if it's a parking issue, my parking control officers out to saturate that area for a period of time. And I've already directed my staff, based on what I'm hearing in this meeting, to saturate the Riverview neighborhood, Bristol and Santa Clara over the next week or two, and basically do enforcement in that area. So, and you're right. Some of the violators are the residents. It doesn't matter though. Part of going out and doing enforcement is educating the public on safety, on rules of the road. And so we do that. And we also issue citations. So my staff will be out there. You'll see them. My parking control officers will be out there specifically to monitor those corners that we talked about. And so, yeah, they'll be out there. You'll see them.
So would we contact you regarding, or do we just email you regarding the corners, the intersections that are a problem? So
I will most likely assign one of my staff members to oversee enforcement. And so you can call our, if it's an after hours type thing, you can call the dispatch line. I think Margarita already put it up. If it's during business hours and you just want to report something you're seeing, call, our number is 245-8200. That's the traffic line. And you'll be able to speak with someone and we'll take the complaint. We have a database of traffic complaints, and every complaint that comes in gets logged, it gets assigned, and it gets worked. And the results of the complaint are logged in the database as well.
Okay, Anna, do you have anything else you want to bring up?
No, I don't, not at this moment.
Councilmember Lopez?
Yeah, I actually have a question for the commander. It's something that I've heard in being at different meetings, but what would you advise people that say, look, I can identify a car that is speed racing in my neighborhood? What advice would you give folks?
So if you can identify a car that's racing, so yeah, we've actually had that before. We actually had a community member who saw a regular racer in their neighborhood that would do donuts in the intersections, and they filmed them. And I put one of my best officers on that problem, and he was able to track down this person and contact the driver and match the driver up with the vehicle, and was able to put together a case and actually filed the case with the district attorney. So if you can identify a vehicle that's actually racing or driving recklessly, then that's something we'd definitely be interested in. You know, it's a little bit harder when the vehicle might be rolling through a stop sign or might be speeding through the neighborhood. That's a little bit more difficult. But we would definitely take the information and work that area. And if we happen to see that car, we could contact the driver.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. I just wanted to say thank you to Director Saba for putting on a summary. It was exactly what I wanted to do. So glad that you did it. And again, I just wanted to thank everybody, you know, the rest of your team for being available, making themselves available tonight to take any questions. And for Margarita and Angie for working with me and coordinating this with Martha and with Elsie. And for all of the neighbors that are on here, I know it's 7:24. We've had a full day of work. We have to cook, do other things, and here we are. And so I want to thank everybody for their questions and for engaging and for coming here with an open mind.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. So yeah, hats off to you, Elsie and Anna, for this virtual meeting, first of its kind, right, in like over a year. And so that there's much work we have ahead, and yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. We hope that everybody has a safe, you know, a safe and sane week, and just you know, I know that the city, we're pushing out vaccines, you know, for, if you know, folks who are 65 years of age and over. We've sent it out on a lot of social media. Nixels, we really want to sign up our community ages 65 and over to get their vaccine out of the Southwest Senior Center, like starting this Saturday. So that's going to be really, really important. And Councilmember Lopez has also shared her contact information for anything else to make herself available to others who are on this call. So with that, we will call it a wrap. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
All right, thank you.
Everyone,
Thank you, everyone.
so much. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.